Everyone, it's Justine. Today I'm using products from the Counting Blessings collection in order to create 3 fall-themed thankful cards that are perfect for the upcoming season. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this stamp of approval is throughout the video, but I want to get started explaining what I'm doing. So I'm going to be creating my own patterned paper here using this maple leaf, and I'm going to fill in any of the white gaps with smaller leaves. I like to stamp them individually, going by color, instead of stamping all the brown at once and all the red at once, because then I would have to guess on the spacing, and I don't want to have to guess. So I just do it one at a time, and what I love about these inks that I'm using from Catherine Pooler is the fact that I just need to give them a quick wipe, and the residue from the previous color won't transfer. It's so cool, and I've never actually experienced this with any other brand of inks before. So I'm using Tiara, Orange Twist, Icing on the Cake, and Rockin Red to create this design. It almost looks like one of those fall-themed tablecloths my mom used to have. So after I finished creating my patterned paper, I took a tag that comes in the collection as well, and I cut down my patterned paper. I also cut out this thankful die that also comes in the collection. So I'm giving you little sneak peeks of what's inside the collection, but if you're curious as to seeing the entire collection, I'll link to Catherine's blog below and you can see it all in action. Some people really like that element of surprise though, and only seeing little sneak peeks, so I'm not going to feature everything in my video today. So I used some multi-medium matte to attach this on, and I have a little nozzle on it so that it comes out really in thin strokes, the glue, so that it's easy to do those delicate dyes. And I was simply just going to cut this down and put it onto my card panel here and call it a day. However, I thought it needed a little bit of extra something. And actually, when I ended up gluing it down, the L went off of the card. And normally I don't have an issue with that, but I wasn't really liking it because it kind of got lost. So what I did do was I took this other die from the collection. As you can see, it's like this little cloud bubbly frame here, and I cut down this panel to an even smaller size. Then I made my card base. It measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when it's folded, and I stuck the piece that I cut out here onto the corner, and I think that little bubbled frame really is perfect final touch for this card. So all I did was add some 3D foam tape on the back to prop it up and give it a little bit more dimension. So if you're curious about this collection, it is a collection of stamps and dies that are available as a complete collection. They're not going to be for sale individually for about 6 months or maybe even longer. So it's really cool that you can pick them up early and get them early. However, there is the option to get them individually, as I said, at a later date. The collection has a retail value of between $120 and $135, and it goes on sale for $97. These collections are released quarterly, and you can sign up to be on the waitlist if you're interested. I'll have the link below for the waitlist. Being on the waitlist doesn't mean that you have to purchase it. It just means that you're going to get the shopping link before anyone else at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on August 16th. It'll go live to the public at 6 p.m. that evening. However, the last collection that came out didn't even make it for public sale, so be sure to sign up for the waitlist if you're interested. Now I'm using the same stamp set as I used on the first card, the leaves motif. However, this time I grabbed all of the stamps that had just the outline on them, and I went through and I just kind of arranged them. And each time I'm stamping in the new color Blackjack, which is a very, very dark gray color. And for me, I like it as an alternative to the black because the black Catherine Pooler ink is an archival ink, which means it's going to stain your stamps. And I prefer to use the Blackjack then if I don't need the archival for a certain reason, like if I'm watercoloring or things like that. And since I'm not going to be doing that, Blackjack's perfect. So I'm going in with a couple of the fall colors again, and this time I'm switching it up by adding a little bit of green to the mixture. And I grabbed a solid leaf and I'm stamping on the inside of the leaves. As you can see, it doesn't completely cover it, but I kind of like the way that that looks, and I'm grabbing different types of insides to go on from the stamp set here to go inside. I think it looks really cool, and I really like that sort of abstract look or that kind of messy look, and I think it looks really fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my paper trimmer now, and I am going to be cutting this on a diagonal. So the way I do this is the first cut doesn't particularly matter. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to be cutting from one side to the other on not a super steep diagonal, but I want to be able to fit my sentiment. So I'm going to be cutting it at about an inch, which means I move, or about an inch and a half actually, and I moved it so that it went to the line on the other side of my paper trimmer, so I got a straight cut. Now the middle I'm just going to toss off to the side as a scrap sheet of paper to use on something else, and I'm going to attach these two panels onto a piece of cardstock using some 3D foam tape, and I'm going to have the middle being white so I can have a nice sentiment really stick out. So I need to put it in. I had my original panel at 4 by 5 1/4, so I do have that frame around it when I put it onto my card base. And I'm going to go ahead and die cut that thankful die that again I used in the first card. And this time I'm going to be actually die cutting it in brown cardstock, and then I'm going to stick that there in the middle of the card, and I think it looks really, really pretty. As a final little embellishment and to add a little extra touch of color, I grabbed the Rockin red ink and one of the small leaves, and I just added a couple of them onto the side here on the white background. Let's move on to the last and final card, and this is this thankful card here. Okay, so to get started, I'm starting off with a card panel that measures 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm grabbing all of the outline stamps from this Leaves Motif stamp. This is the same stamp that I've been using for all 3 cards, and it's just so versatile. I wanted to create something that looked very different than the first 2 cards. So I added the 3 leaves onto one block just to save myself some time when I'm stamping. I'm going to grab my Versamark ink, and I'm going to ink up the whole background using this stamp. So I am going to stamp, and I know you can't see it on camera, but it does leave a water impression on the cardstock, so you are able to see where you've stamped. If you have bad eyes like myself and you want to maybe help yourself along this way and not guess, you can put the embossing powder on after each time and then heat it all at the end if you want. So you can see towards the end I removed some leaves so it was easier. I then threw some white embossing powder over top of the ink before it started to dry and flicked the back to get off any excess powder. I then melted the embossing powder using a heat tool, and then I was able to start my distress blending. Now you'll see that I actually did the distress blending off screen, but there's a reason for it, because what I'm doing is adding a stencil, and I'm going to be doing the exact same thing I did before I added the stencil. So I'm grabbing 3 different colors here. I'm grabbing Tutti Frutti, Orange Twist, and Tiki Torch. And I am going in a circular motion using a blending tool, and I am going over top of my card, which I've already done this once, again without the stencil. However, this time I've added this leaf stencil, so I'm going to get an even cooler pattern. So you can see those layers on the cardstock. I have the blending, I have the emboss resist, and then I have the stenciling on there, which creates such a cool 3D effect. So once I was finished making that, I glued this panel here onto my card background, and then I was able to go ahead and add the sentiment. So it was a thankful sentiment again, the same one that I used for the other 3 cards. This time I die cut it in black, and I'm using my multimedia mat here to add it to my card. It started getting dark outside, so I ended up finishing this card the next day, and when the lighting got a little bit better, so I apologize there that it got a little bit dim. So once I was finished that, I thought that it looked a little bit plain, so I wanted to go ahead and add some extra embellishment. So I decided to add some Nuvo drops to the mix, and the Nuvo drops are just essentially enamel dots in a jar that you can squeeze out, and you can add as much or as little as you want, and that'll give you different perspectives as to how big they are. So I did them all over the place where there were gaps in the card, and I did a small, a medium, and a large one in all the little gapped areas. So as you can see, I just squeeze. I hold the tip to the paper, squeeze a little bit, then I squeeze a little bit more, then I squeeze the most, and that'll give you 3 nice size dots. I'm just going to speed you up for the last few ones here while I finish up the card, and I hope you enjoyed this card tutorial today with 3 different cards. Once again, if you want to get on the wait list for the stamp collection, then make sure you do so. I'll have the link below in the video description. It's really an awesome program. and I'm sure you'll love the kit as much as I do. If you're interested in subscribing to my channel, you can head over to the right. If you want to check out some more videos featuring Catherine Pooler's inks, I'll have them listed below in the video description. Or you can check out my blog to visit the blog hop there, and that is going on and win some fabulous prizes. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Bye!